And we are live. Once again, LarryCJohnson, my good friend, how are you doing?
I'm here. Not nobody's shooting at me, thank God. So,
So far, so good, let's
so far,
say.
yeah, that's things are looking up.
Fantastic. Larry, we just recently had an article from yesterday actually, from New York Times. Was it an early April Fool's Day?
Boy, certainly that was one of my initial thoughts. I mean, you waited for somebody to jump out and go, "April Fools, we didn't mean it." um, a remarkable article because it's so disingenuous and dishonest in some aspects. It is honest. It's honest in this regard that it is admitting that U.S. involvement in Ukraine's war with Russia is far more extensive than the public has been told. Now, for those of us who have followed it, we're not at all surprised. We've been saying a lot of these things for 3 years. But now this New York Times reporter admits that the planning for actual attacks, the weapons that were used in those attacks, that was all being done by the United States with Ukrainian participation. The Ukrainians weren't driving the boat. We were. The Ukrainians were many times along with his passengers. Why I say the piece is dishonest is when the tone of it throughout is basically, man, are these American generals, they are so smart. Donovan and Cavoli, good God, they are military geniuses. Von Clausewitz would want to be as smart as them. And they've made all these great plans. And if only those stupid Ukrainians who just, if only they'd listened to them and done what they said, they would have beat Russia. But, the reason they're not beating Russia is because Ukrainians suck. They're too stupid. I mean, that's...
And Trump bad.
Yeah. And you're going, boy, this Adam Enthouse, he's got his head so far up the ass of the U.S. military establishment. He's got a big brown ring around his neck. I mean, it's ridiculous. What he's writing is basically racist, and it misplaces. For example, he takes credit that all these great, smart military planners, man, they're fighting on another level, and the Ukrainians could only hope to imagine it. Well, they took credit for the plan of the counteroffensive in 2023. Now, they complained that it didn't get off to start in May, but it happened in June. Well, what Enthouse fails to acknowledge is that the U.S. military planners didn't provide any kind of close air support, no air support whatsoever for an attacking ground force against an entrenched defender. That's crap you learn in your first year at West Point. That, if you're going to attack a fixed defended position, it might be nice to have some air power and some artillery to soften it up so you can get in there. But no, these geniuses, Donovan or whatever, Cavoli, they failed to do that. But that's not their fault. It was the Ukrainians' fault for not asking about it. That kind of thing.
You didn't ask, I didn't give. Well,
and the attitude throughout the piece is that the Russian military sucks, they're weak, they're incompetent, they're stupid. And without, again, acknowledging that when the special military operation started, under conventional military doctrine, an attacking force should have a 3-to-1 advantage over the defenders. In this case, Russia did it exactly the opposite. They were outnumbered 3-to-1 by the Ukrainians, and yet, despite that disadvantage, had rolled up and surrounded Kiev from the north, had taken Kharkiv, had taken Kherson, they took a significant chunk of territory with 1/3 of the amount of troops. And then, again, in this Adam Enthouse article at the New York Times, insists that the Russians were overstretched, and that's why they were driven out of their positions north of Kiev. No, that's not what happened. What happened was in March 29th and 30th, there were negotiations in Istanbul, and the Ukrainians and the Russians agreed upon a peace deal. In fact, Lavrov told me 3 weeks ago that the ones who the agreement that they initialed was brought to the meeting by the Ukrainians, and it was Ukraine then that walked away from that and canceled the deal. And then Russia had agreed as a gesture of goodwill, okay, we'll withdraw our forces from around Kiev. And they were betrayed again in these negotiations. So, as I said, this article smacks of a bad April Fool's joke, but it ain't no joke. It is a piece of propaganda, and it's filled with lies and deceptions. But it provides some uncomfortable facts, which is the United States has attacked Russia militarily, has committed an act of war, and it's by the grace of God and Vladimir Putin that Russia has not responded and hit us with nuclear weapons. You're muted.
Darn, sorry. That also sounded a lot to me like a soft landing on a defeat narrative. So we got it to start to acknowledge some facts. We are going to lose. And it looked like pretty soon. Things are not working out. Let's blame Trump. Of course, why not? Let's whitewash Biden, and let's start to say that, yeah, if there was Biden or Kamala, for that matter, we would be winning. But no, you choose Donald Trump. Yeah, even better. It's not Trump's fault. It's the people of the United States who vote for Trump. That's even better.
Yeah, well, look, right now the narrative that's coming out of Washington, D.C. is that the Russians are dragging their feet and stalling this process. Well, that's a lie. So right now they've got two agreements that the United States and Russia have made. The first was to a 30-day ceasefire to not attack energy infrastructure in either in Russia or in Ukraine. Russia has agreed to that. Russia was abiding by that, but Ukraine has violated it multiple times now. So Russia's stood back saying, hey, they're violating it. So when this ends, we're not going to renew it. The second one was the deal they reached in Riyadh to reopen the Black Sea deal, which allows grain and fertilizer exports out. But the conditions that Russia laid out for that was, hey, the sanctions that have been put in place, that sanctioned ships that are carrying the grain and the fertilizer, as well as the economic sanctions that prevent our agricultural bank from being able to process payments using SWIFT, that needs to be restored. Now, the Europeans were the ones that opposed a lot of those sanctions. And in the United States, instead of getting a firm commitment from Europe to do it, just assumed, oh, yeah, okay, we'll get that done. And as soon as the announced agreement came out, the Europeans said, hell no, we're not going to do that. Go screw yourselves. So what's Russia supposed to do? Russia said, hey, we're willing to make the deal. Here's our conditions. They're not going to back off of those conditions. They're reasonable conditions. If you want this, we want to have our grain shipped out and we get paid for it. And to get paid for it, it's got to go through the banks. So that means you guys got to lift those sanctions on the banks, allow this activity to go on. Oh, no, that can't happen. It is, this is what the West doesn't understand, that Russia, Russia means what it says. Vladimir Putin said it on June 6, 2024, and it's been reiterated time and time again by Foreign Minister Lavrov and Deputy Foreign Minister Rybkov and Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova and, the President's spokesman Peskov. I mean, they all keep saying
All the crew.
We're not paying attention.
Yeah.
One of those in there is that there needs to be regime change in Ukraine. And Trump is like said, who does Putin think he is talking about regime change? Well, why is Putin saying that? In September of 2022, Zelensky signed into law, I guess, as a presidential directive,
into Constitution
order, said, hey, anybody that talks, it's illegal to talk to Putin, specifically. And can't talk to Putin. No negotiations with Putin, or, go to jail or get shot. I forget what penalty was attached, but it was significant. So, even if Putin called up, Zelensky can't talk to him until that law is changed. So the United States, instead of saying, okay, hey, Vladimir, we're going to start this negotiation. We're going to get the law changed in Ukraine. We're going to tell them they got to change this law. This can't withdraw that now, or we're going to cut you off completely. And Trump and the team didn't do that. And they still labor. We got the remarks from Marco Rubio's State Department and his spokeswoman now, Tammy Bruce. Oh, Russia's going to have to make compromises. Bullshit. They don't have to make a single compromise.
Why should they?
They are not going to agree to a ceasefire until the conditions they've laid out are met. And one of those conditions is that all of Ukraine, the 4 oblasts that were formerly Ukrainian oblasts, are now federal republics, part of the Federal Republic in Russia. Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. And that all Ukrainian forces need to be withdrawn from there. And all Ukrainian forces withdrawn from any part of Russian territory. That's the first step. Can't even begin talking about a ceasefire until that happens. Russia's not going to back off of that. And in fact, we've seen in the last 3 weeks that President Putin has adjusted his language. So instead of just talking about those 4 new republics, he's also now talking about Novorossiya. And Novorossiya basically encompasses all territory that's east of the Dnieper River and runs along the west bank of the Dnieper, which means Kiev. I think realistically could look at Russia retaking control of Kiev. And if Ukraine wants to have a capital, they can put it in Lviv. But Ukraine is going to come back under Russian control. I think that's where this is headed. And, the Trump team just they're not listening to the Russians. They're not listening to what they say. So
seems like nothing had changed. It's just people not listening anyway, but now with a different, tune on the voice. I don't know.
Well, Trump gets frustrated. He's going to get increasingly frustrated. And, he'll look like a buffoon. That's the reality. He can protest all he wants. But Russia wants to, they want to talk to the United States. They want to try to have friendly relations with the United States. But they're not gonna surrender their sovereignty to the West. They recognize the United States is not a trustworthy partner.
And as oh dear Lord, I forgot the name. Andrei Martyanov always say,
Yeah.
yeah, superpowers they have to get along. It's a different type of relation. You cannot simply, well, they have to is perhaps too much from my part, but it's better that they get along. They have another level of talking to each other. So it's better that they go along. We Some people may get frustrated. Oh, yeah, darn, all this happened, and now United States going to whitewash some face. Well, something will happen that will be all right for the United States. Europe, well, Europe's done. What to say about but yeah, it should be better that big boys like Kamala said, not Kamala, the Karine Jean Pierre, big boys should talk together. That's the, but they have to listen as well. It looks
Well,
like the United States not listening.
yeah, Putin's been very clear. He made an important speech a week ago Thursday. So it's been now like 10 days. He was speaking to the industrialists, the manufacturers of Russia. So these are the owners of businesses that actually make things. And, he told him, he said, look, we hope to have, better relations with Washington, with the United States. But don't kid yourself that we're going to get back into a normal economic relationship where we don't have to worry about sanctions. In fact, the United States is always going to impose sanctions if they can. That's why we are charting an independent course with the BRICS countries to create an alternative to the US dominated, the dollar dominated international economy. That we can do commerce, we can do trade without having to go through a US dollar account, without having to worry about US economic sanctions. Because they're never going to stop. They're never going to treat us as equals and with respect. So, he understands. And Trump and team don't. Oh, if he doesn't do it, we're going to put on 25% more tariffs. Go ahead, knock yourself out. You're not going to damage them.
Yeah, Alex Cristoforo made a piece yesterday where he cites another piece, a comedy piece, and he compares the oil, for example, from Russia with crack.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sitting on all this crack. Chris Rock's piece.
Yeah,
I'm sitting on
Rock
all
comedy.
this oil, and what am I going to do? How can I sell this? How can I go around and sell all this oil to the world? Well, yeah, the world is going to buy it, no matter what. And things just not work the way they used to work 70, 50 years ago. People have to start to look at that.
Well, this didn't start with Trump. This predates Trump.
Sure.
But this animus towards both Russia and Iran and China is it's ultimately irrational. So, and by virtue of being irrational, there is no ability to have an open discussion about it. Iran, for example, routinely is identified as the major sponsor of terrorism. Yet, when we go back starting 32 years ago, the major terrorist attacks against the United States, starting with the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, the 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, the 2000 attack on the USS Cole, the 9/11 attacks. These the terrorist attacks were, violence used against civilians. This was all the work of Sunni Salafists, Sunni Muslims who represented one of the most extreme views within Sunni theology. They weren't Shia. The Shia, in fact, opposed those radical Islamists. It was, after the attacks on 9/11, as I recall, Iran held a candlelight vigil for the American victims. And it was Iran and Syria that was fighting ISIS. And here's the United States was claiming that we're fighting ISIS, but at the same time funding them and supporting them in other ways. This just is truly sick. And so here today, again, the main terrorist groups that are actually carrying out attacks on civilians, beheading Christians and Alawites in Syria are these Sunni extremists. The ones who attacked the Crocus shopping center and theater in Moscow 2 years ago. Those were Sunni Muslims. So, there is that, nobody wants to think about this logically.
It's very easy to, after years and years of Hollywood movies, portraying the terrorists as, these Arab Muslims. It's very easy just to blame Iran. You see,
Yeah,
they are
yeah.
Muslims. They are not Arab, but they are Muslims. So
Yeah.
it became easy.
As are the Houthis. The Houthis also are a Shia Muslim sect. They're actually, I've been told, reliably informed that their version of Shia Islam predates that of the Twelver Shiism that dominates in Iran.
Yeah. So since we move into that direction of the Houthis, so Yemen and Iran, recently I have one question that kind of englobes several subjects on the issue. So you just today, I didn't have the time to watch it. Just today, you released an interview with Pepe Escobar,
Mm-hmm.
who was in Yemen along with Jackson Hinkle, if I'm not mistaken, and some other people.
Yeah.
He made a great speech there, and it was packed of people, like millions of people, more than a million, I guess.
There were more than 1 million people assembled there that heard him speak.
In the middle of bombings, because, well, not there precisely, of course, but the United States have been bombing overtly. Last week we had the signal leak, which was shameful, of course. So in the middle of bombings, they had this the celebration of the end of the Ramadan, and they had this event packed of people, and people seemed very cheerful about that. So I would like to understand, first of all, the hell is the United States bombing the Houthis for? All right, we kind of know, but what's the excuse? Is the United States in war against Yemen, or they are not saying that? And the second thing that let's break it in parts about that. I would like to understand better the situation, because the Yemen army has been actually publishing that is attacking the Ben Gurion airport in Israel and fighting back the U.S. Aircraft carrier.
Yeah, well, um, what we know, the excuse used in the Signalgate chats is that Yemen was interfering with freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. But that is not true. Um, in, in the wake of the ceasefire that Donald Trump negotiated through his emissary, Steve Witkoff, in the wake of that ceasefire, the Houthis agreed to the ceasefire. They stopped attacking ships. They put a halt to their attempts to disrupt maritime shipping in the Red Sea. They wanted, because the reason they started it in the first place was to provide support for the Palestinian people. So the Houthis did that. And as we see in that chat, that the Trump team just decided they're going to make an example of them. And again, push the foolish and silly argument that that the Biden administration was only doing a half-assed effort to stop them, and by God, now we're going to really drop bombs on them. All of that presupposes that we've got actually good intelligence about where their key locations are, and that we have the ability to penetrate deeply underground. The U.S. has been bombing now for 16 days. We started on March 15th. And the Shia the Houthis just shot down another MQ-9 Predator drone. Those go for at least $30 million a pop. And this is now the 17th one that the Houthis have claimed to have shot down. Well, that's $510 million. That's $500 million worth of drones that the Houthis have shot down. Pretty significant. Up to this point, it is not clear that the Houthis have tried to launch sustained attacks on the U.S. ships. Part of that may be an intelligence issue, that they don't have the overhead intelligence necessary to make those targeting decisions. But they have been able to launch 3 strikes into Israel at the Ben Gurion airport. I think the longer the United States continues to try to hit them, the longer the Yemenis will continue to fight back. So I don't see it going, this coming to an end anytime soon. At some point, as the Houthis launch attacks on the carrier strike group, the ships defending the carrier are going to have to withdraw to rearm, to reload their missile base, because they don't have any way to do that while at sea.
Yeah, the second part of my questions on this matter, and you just told me just before we come into air that you had a conversation together with Scott on Nima's channel, Dialogue Works. So Scott recently made some. He wrote a piece on Twitter that was not very popular. I actually made a video about that. I kind of understand some paths that that Scott could have getting to that conclusion, but it's not talking about Scott. I would like to talk about the argument that he made about Iran, and Iran kinda developing its nuclear energy to a level that can be easily transformed into nuclear capabilities, and the United States reaction to that. Well, it's not a reaction. It sounds more like an excuse to me, but the reaction from Donald Trump, you do what I tell you again, or else. What do you think about the United States reaction, the Iranian path that is following? How do you see this developing?
Yes. So Scott's position is that he thinks Iran is being deliberately provocative by announcing that it has enriched uranium up to the 60% level. And Scott, by virtue of, he's got extensive experience with nuclear inspections and the different covenants, agreements governing who does what, like the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, which Iran is a signatory to. According to Scott, what Iran is doing is in violation of the NPT, and therefore it is making Iran a target. I don't want to use the word legitimate because I don't think Scott's not making the argument that the United States has the right to attack Iran, but he's saying that is what Washington is using as their justification for attacking Iran. And he thinks that would have some weight among some other countries. Now, I disagree with Scott because that what Iran has been doing is a reaction to U.S. efforts to subvert and destroy Iran. There have been repeated terrorist attacks and assassinations of key Iranian personnel. It started really in earnest back in 15 years ago with the assassination of at least 6 Iranian nuclear scientists by Mossad or groups linked to Mossad, but certainly with the encouragement and support of the United States. So, point I've raised with Scott, and I think he agrees that no matter what Iran does, let's just say that Iran came out tomorrow and said, okay, look, well, we're going to get rid of that nuclear enrichment program, and we're going to allow international inspectors to come in to verify that we're not doing that. Even if they did that, the West is not going to stop its efforts to subvert and destroy the Islamic Republic of Iran. The West
That's
wants
exactly
to,
the point I made.
yeah, the West wants to eliminate the Islamic Republic of Iran and will do whatever it takes. So even if Iran took that step to try to defuse the situation, I don't think they're going to be able to defuse it. We also, I think, disagree on what Russia's response would be if Iran is attacked. I think Scott believes that Russia will say, won't be in favor of it, but is not going to actually take any concrete actions or steps to help Iran fend off a Western attack. Again, I disagree. And, we don't always have to agree on things to be friends. I count Scott as a friend.
Oh, of course,
And
of course.
I respect.
Exactly. As I told you, I don't want to put in that kind of situation. This is not. I don't even want to talk about Scott's opinion as well. Of course, it's always welcome, and say this difference is important for us to understand. But this is
Yeah.
not the point for people that's watching us.
Well, and here's where I think the West, particularly in the United States, has made some fundamental mistakes in assessing the relationship between Iran and Russia and Iran and China. What I would note is that although the first joint naval military exercise among China, Russia, and Iran took place in 2019, the planning for that probably started in late 2017, which meant those 3 governments came together and agreed, hey, let's do this together. Well, so they're planning ahead starting then. So you've got a level of cooperation, at least 8 years worth of joint military cooperation between Russia, China, and Iran. Then we get the agreement, the comprehensive security agreement that Russia and Tehran signed, Putin with Pezeshkian. They signed it on the 17th of January, 3 days before Donald Trump is inaugurated. Why did they do that? Again, I think what Russia is looking to restructure its economy to make it sanction proof. That means increasing its military cooperation with the BRICS countries and the global south, and to set up an alternative financial system that cannot be held hostage by the West. And one key element in that financial system is this new north-south, let's call it north-south highway, running from the Indian Ocean through Iran, through Azerbaijan, into Russia. One of the reasons Russia wants to do that is to prevent the United States or Turkey or Egypt from being able to shut down Russian access to the Indian Ocean via the Suez Canal and the straits, the Dardanelles that run into the Black Sea. So Russia is creating, if you will, an alternate route with that North Sea, let's call it a pipeline, but it's not just a pipeline. It's going to be a railroad. It'll be a way to move significant amounts of cargo and goods from the ocean up north and from up north back down to the ocean. That tells me that Russia now recognizes Iran is going to be a critical partner in its economic future. And as such, Russia, I don't think, is going to sit back and do nothing if the West and Israel decide to try to attack and destroy Iran. I don't think Russia is going to let Iran be destroyed that way.
And you mentioned Russia, but it's also crucial to China because the Belt and Road Initiative, it goes through Iran, through Africa as well, to the northern part of Africa until West Africa, all the way through the Sahel. Well, that's planned, the idea, not ongoing yet. But yeah, to get access to the Atlantic Ocean as well. This is pretty important. People are taking very low, people are paying very low attention on logistics. This is extremely important.
Right.
Excellent. And yeah, I as I told you, I wrote a piece about in Twitter about this Twitter from Scott. He had a very intense exchange with Syed Marandi, but some points he was very right in what I saw. All the facts that he points out, in my opinion, was very right. The one fact that I think he failed was exactly what you just point out. Facts don't matter. Iran can do whatever he wants to make peace, to be all right, and like Iraq, like Syria, like Libya, the West will come for it in the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that Iran can do except kill itself that'll satisfy the West. So I don't see them being suicidal. I think I think Scott and I both agree that it's highly likely that the United States is going to try to take military action against Iran. my friend Ray McGovern disagrees. He thinks it's just all Trump bombast, and that there won't be any bite to that bark. And Ray may be right. I hope he's right, but I don't think so. I think the odds are strong that they're that deluded. They've convinced themselves that Iran is weak and can be easily attacked with little risk to the United States. And when that assumption proves to be wrong, and let's say if they try to send in B-52 bombers to bomb it, they're going to get shot down. Iran will shoot down B-52 bombers. So we lose a couple of B-52 bombers. And they've also got the ability to take out a B-2 and maybe an F-35. So the United States could lose several aircraft. Even if they lose one or two, that's going to be a bit of a shock, especially if the pilot survives and is now captive, been captured by Iran. Then all of a sudden, the United States got a POW to worry about. So this is, there's been a lot of magical thinking taking place, I think, in the Trump administration, that they believe this can be a relatively cost-free military operation, that we can inflict significant damage. All we got to do is just hit Iran and it's going to crack. They're going to come apart at the seams. I don't think that's a realistic view. We'll see.
Yeah, the problem with pushing a narrative, even if just for barking loud, is that sometimes it gets traction. And when it gets traction, sometimes it's very hard to back off from it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Larry, I think I'm good for today on my questions. Very happy to wait. Oh, I haven't started the streaming.
Did you record it?
No.
Huh?
Can we do it? Can we do it again?
I don't have time.
April Fools, come on. Let's have fun, people. Let's smile. The smile is good. We were. It's recorded and it's online.
All right.
Perfect.
Boy.
Larry, my friend, thank you.
You're an evil man.
Oh. LarryJohnson, my friend, thank you very much once again. Hope to see you next week.
Okay, Marcel.
Take good care, man.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.